never worked. Tonight on the Daily Wrap, same-sex marriage now legal in all 50 states as an historic Supreme Court ruling, but not everyone is happy with the decision. We'll talk with Pastor Rick Scarborough and professor at George Mason University, Frank Buckley. And Bernie Sanders is closing in on Hillary Clinton. Should she be worried? Plus, breaking news regarding one of the escapees from a New York correctional facility. We'll tell you what that's all about and more. This is the Daily Wrap, live from New York City. And welcome to the show, everybody. Tonight, of course, joined, as always, by Rick Unger, Sirius XM. Yeah. Another good day for you.
Big day today,
big
wasn't it?
Big week for liberals, isn't it?
Big week for the country.
For the country, okay.
Right, Amy?
It was a big week for the country.
Can I introduce you first?
Oh,
yes.
Okay. She is from the Blaze TV. She's a news anchor and also a former speechwriter for former Senate Majority Leader Bill Frist. She is Amy Holmes, and we'll get your opinion on the week in just a moment.
All right.
Okay. And finally, we have the host of Close Encounter, Lisa Janovitz, is back with the glasses tonight. Always keeps us guessing with the branding. All right, let's get right to the Daily Download. And before we get to the Supreme Court ruling, we have breaking news regarding those two escaped prisoners from an upstate New York prison. After 3 weeks on the run, one of the fugitives, Richard Matt, has been shot and killed by police just hours ago near the Canadian border. Police are still chasing David Sweat. We will update you as information becomes available.
This morning, the Supreme Court recognized that the Constitution guarantees marriage equality. In doing so, they've reaffirmed that all Americans are entitled to the equal protection of the law. That all people should be treated equally, regardless of who they are or who they love.
Supreme Court dropping another bombshell ruling today. Gay marriage now legal in all 50 states. In a 5-4 ruling, Justice Anthony Kennedy wrote, "No union is more profound than marriage, for it embodies the highest ideals of love, fidelity, devotion, sacrifice, and family. In forming a marital union, two people become something greater than once they were." That's from Kennedy. Chief Justice John Roberts, who wrote the dissent, said of those supporters of gay marriage, "Celebrate the opportunity for a new expression of a commitment to a partner. Celebrate the availability of new benefits. But do not celebrate the Constitution. It had nothing to do with it." Okay, so, by the way, Justice Antonin Scalia, who's had quite a week as far as dissents are concerned, certainly on fire lately with his dissents, particularly of the Obamacare ruling, said of today's ruling, when we quote, "The opinion is couched in a style that is pretentious as its content is egotistic. Of course, the opinion's showy profundities are often profoundly incoherent." Okay, Rick, you said they'd split the baby, and apparently...
I missed on this one.
Yeah.
I did. You know, I destroyed my record of perfection. What are you going to do? I have to tell you, I was a little bit surprised. I don't think you can call it a bombshell, because I think most were expecting what we got. I had actually thought, particularly when they released the Obamacare decision before, that what we were going to see is they would back up the equal protection argument and say if one state allows gay marriage, another state must recognize that state. What I didn't necessarily expect them to do was to say that you have a constitutional right to marry if you're gay. That was the bit of a surprise. It's a surprise I welcome, I have to say, because I think they're right. I think it's funny we picked a part of Scalia's dissent that was really one of the nicer things he had to say. It was somewhat remarkable even for him.
I was really surprised actually by Chief Justice Roberts on the gay marriage ruling, saying that this was, you know, straight up legislative action by the court, when that seemed to be precisely what he did with Obamacare. Like, all of a sudden he opposes legislating from the bench when it comes to gay marriage, but in Obamacare I think that clearly was the case. I am a supporter of gay marriage, and like Rick, I thought it was always problematic that a couple could be legally married in one state and then that marriage not be recognized in another. I'm not a constitutional scholar, but I do appreciate legal scholars who've come out against this decision, not because of its result, but because of the manner, the means.
Lisa?
I think, and I'm also not, I am for gay marriage. However, I'm also very concerned about the whole issue of religious liberty, religious freedom. And I think that that is going to be something that we're going to hear a lot about. Because I don't know how that could not intersect. I know that according to the ruling, it is saying that if you sincerely have religious objections, you will not be forced, to comply. But there are so many gray areas, not just including churches, but religious schools. Sure. If they do not want to have teachers that are, have same-sex marriages, there are going to be a number of issues where this is going to come up, and that's where we're going to see.
If you want to know how they can be brought together, I suggest read my column in Forbes.com today, because I discussed just this issue. Let's bring in our guest.
Absolutely. Joining us now from Washington, D.C. is Professor Frank Buckley of George Mason University. Professor, thanks for coming on. What did you make of the Supreme Court ruling today? Were you surprised or about what you were expecting?
I was surprised because I didn't think it was necessary. I thought that if you had full faith and credit, and if I'm in Virginia and a same-sex couple wants to get married, they go to Maryland, that's not exactly a big deal. Or worst case scenario, they go up to Niagara Falls for a honeymoon. How bad is that? So I thought it was kind of unnecessary. But the greater concern, as was mentioned, is what does this do to religious institutions? And that's a real problem. You guys are all in favor of gay marriage. I have to confess, I'm bored by it. It really doesn't bother me all that much one way or the other. But I do like the idea of freedom of association, and I think that religious colleges should be able to do whatever they want and not be penalized. But you can expect that the administration will probably want to do so. Expect that you will see the IRS challenging tax-exempt status for religious institutions. But on the other hand, when I read Kennedy's decision, I felt a little better about that because he went out of his way to make a couple of points. One is it's two people only, it's not plural marriages. And the other is he was very strong on the subject of religious freedom. And there have been a lot of cases recently where 9-zip, the court has defended religious freedom against the administration. That's this court, but nevertheless, for the short term at least, I would not expect a great deal of change.
Professor Buckley, there's something you said that I found a bit surprising, aside from being bored with it, which maybe I can appreciate, but you said that you didn't think it was necessary. If, in fact, the Supreme Court got this right and that actual constitutional rights, setting aside the equal protection argument, were at stake here, isn't protecting the rights of Americans always necessary?
No.
Really?
Depends how you define rights. If you define rights your way, then you say you won the battle, but I don't see it that way.
Well, I wasn't talking about a battle. Wait, let me ask the question again. Isn't it always important to protect the rights, whether you agree that it should be a right or not? Aren't American rights granted under the Constitution always important? I'm a little shocked you would say no.
You're begging the question, aren't you? You're saying, I've got my definition of rights, and you better sign on to it. And here's your problem.
I'm saying it's the court that decides that.
Here's your problem. Here's your problem. The problem with respect to constitutional rights is that it really defines who we are as Americans. We don't have a national language really much anymore. We don't have a national literature to speak of. We don't have a national religion. We have the Declaration. We have the Constitution. And if you're on the wrong side of the Constitution, then there's something wrong with you and you are slightly less than an American. And gosh, that sounded like what you just said.
Professor Amy Holmes here, and only 30 seconds left, but what about the question of free expression? And I'm talking about, folks who make wedding cakes, wedding photographers. Will this decision impact their religious freedom to say, I don't agree with gay marriage, I don't want to use my talents to promote it?
Yes and no. I think ultimately the Supreme Court will defend their right, but only after years of protracted legal battles, which we can expect to begin shortly. And you know what? The process is the punishment.
Professor, it's Rick Unger again. Since you did say that I was being un-American, do you mind terribly if I ask you what you teach over at George Mason Law?
Oh, sure. I teach a course on the framers, and I teach a course on contract law. And by the way, speaking of Americanism, I only became an American last year.
What's that?
I only became an American last
Well, I
year.
only became an American 64 years ago, which might explain why I'm apparently un-American. But
No,
go ahead,
I
Joe.
said you were calling me un-American.
No, I certainly wasn't. I wouldn't do that, even if you had been an American longer than just last year.
And gentlemen, we'll have to leave it there. Frank, I love the hat, by the way. That is tremendous. So thanks
Cool,
for joining us from George Mason. We really appreciate it. Coming up next, we'll dive further into this historic ruling. Stay right here. So.